What is up, everybody? Skratch coming up with another Raid Shadow Legends video. Today we're gonna talk about legendary champions, skill tomes, and efficiency. Since the legendary skill tomes are probably the most scarce resource in the entire game, we wanna be very careful with what champions we're booking. A lot of times we are getting legendary champions, but we don't have the books to book every single one of them, and I would not really suggest you to book every single one of them. Personally, I like to book the meta champions, the top champions in the game, because they become even better, and I feel like they're not gonna hold me back, especially if I'm doing arena or clan boss, where you really wanna have them fully booked. Now, a lot of the champions in the game can perform pretty good without being booked, so that's kind of like the main topic of today's video. I wanna help you guys to save some books, and I'm gonna explain you different reasons for every single champion once we get at them. But if we're gonna have a quick look at this, I have tons of champions that require books. I'm not able to keep up the step with it, just for the simple fact that I'm not buying every single book back in the store. The clan boss doesn't give us that many, and we cannot farm them from anywhere in the game. Well, we are getting a small amount of books, comparing with how many we would actually need to book a champion, right? Like, so many of them, they need 10 plus legendary skill tomes. Now, whenever you're booking a champion, this is kind of like a side tip for whoever is not that experienced in the game. Don't always go in and load 6 books without paying attention at what you're doing and just click upgrade. You know, always go and look at the skills, and you're gonna be like, well, I don't really care about this skill, but I really care about this skill as an example. This one needs 4 books. Well, let me just put 4 books and try to load them all in the same skill. You might get lucky. It's not something that's happening, but it's the RNG, so you might actually get lucky. A lot of times I'm doing that. I'm literally loading them in a skill, like this one, for example, as well. I actually managed to save 5 books from here because I don't care about this skill, and 1 more from there. So I managed to save 6, 7 books. I do not care about the cooldown either. All I care about is that 25% extra chance to land the debuffs. She's my spider champion. I am using her for a HP burn, so I don't really care about anything else. Kaimar is gonna decrease the cooldowns of her skills, so she's gonna work like she's actually fully booked when she's not. So a lot of champions can actually work like this. There are tons and tons of them, but I want to talk about the top 15 champions that I think you can use them without any books at all and still benefit tremendously from using those champions. Okay, so we're gonna start with kind of like the opposite of the GOAT champion. I pulled him this week, and I kind of hate him because I pulled him so many times in my raid career that I just can't like him. And a lot of you guys will be like, well, he's my MVP in the clan boss team. I do not disagree with that, but I still hate him. So that is Balanor, okay? On the A1, he just gets a bit of extra damage. On the A2, he gets damage, no cooldown decrease. He still has a 100% chance to land debuffs. And on the A3, he gets 1 cooldown, more damage. But this doesn't really mean much for your clan boss team either, because you will want to have the A1 used more and more just to have that crit rate buff on your entire team constantly. So overall, I wouldn't book this champion. 100% I wouldn't book this champion unless I would be like some mega whale, because honestly, he's doing the job just fine the way he is. Now, if we're gonna go at his partner, for example, we're gonna go all the way to the Dark Elves. Xayvia, another champion that she is indeed a very powerful champion. She will work amazing fully booked, but if you are limited on books and you're like, well, should I book my Reviver? Should I book my Seal of the Drakes? Should I book my Duchess? Should I book somebody else? Yeah, because she's gonna have the same chance of landing poisons from the A1, which is kind of like the main skill that you're constantly going to use. On the A2, you're not actually decreasing the cooldown, you're just increasing a bit of damage and the chance to land poisons, and it's still not going to 100% chance. The A3, you are getting more damage when you're actually detonating the poisons, but since we're going all the way up to the higher stages where poison detonation is not really such an important thing anymore, I feel like, yeah, I wouldn't honestly waste the books on Xayvia either, unless I'm super loaded with books. She will work just fine without books, guys. And honestly, I use this champion without books on my account because she was one of my very first legendaries for such a long time, and she did such an amazing job, like 0 complaints. since we're at the Dark Elves, we actually have quite a few champions that I want to talk about from here. Astrolith. Now, a lot of people are saying that the bombs will be the new meta in Arena. They are the new meta in Arena. I still disagree with it. I've been saying this since the Stone Skin came out. They can do some work, but honestly, not that impressive. Now, this champion right here, for example, increases the damage on the A1. You have a 1-turn cooldown on the A2 and more damage. But this damage does not affect the damage that the actual bombs do. So, booking this skill will kind of be a waste because you're not gonna build your Astrolith with full crit rate and tons of crit damage since it's not really matching her kit. You just wanna give her some survivability and as much attack as possible. On the other hand, with the A3, this is a skill that it would benefit from being booked. But since the bombs are so OP and they're just gonna wreck all this Stone Skin in the game, you're not gonna have to worry about using this skill because the enemies, they're gonna be dead way before you're gonna get to use this skill, you know? And that's kind of like how I feel about Astrolith. I personally don't have her fully booked. I am using her probably 5 to 10 times a week, and she's doing the job pretty decent. The only reason why I would decide to book her is if Plarium would confirm that this 25% extra damage from books increases the damage that the bombs do, which from what I understood is not accurate. So I wouldn't suggest you to book Astrolith either. She would work just fine the way she is. Now, if we're talking about Queen Eva, honestly, in my opinion, one of the worst legendary champions in the entire game. She looks awesome, such a shame, but she's only good at campaign, man. She cannot do anything else. Now, I tried using this champion in campaign at level 50, no books, no masteries, and she was still farming brutal campaign. I don't think she's gonna farm Nightmare even if she's fully booked or whatever. But basically, you don't wanna book her because once you kill the enemies, let me see, with which skill this one, you're gonna reset the cooldowns of all the other skills. So you're gonna be able to go again with the same skill over and over and over again. So it's not really any point in booking this champion. It's just gonna be a waste of books. So definitely save your books with this particular champion because all that matters is this skill. You don't need crazy stats on her to farm campaign, you know? That's kind of like her job. Another champion from this faction, Vizier Ovelis. Now, I'm kind of like, yes and no with this champion. So, if you're only gonna use him, for example, for clan boss, you know? Probably you're only gonna use this skill on him. And 15% chance from booking him, it will benefit you a lot, you know? In terms of using the A1. But at the same time, wasting 3 and 5, 8 books in total just to try to get there is not really something that I would do unless this will determine that I'm gonna be able to 1-key Ultra Nightmare. If you think that this is the only thing holding you back, then yeah, probably I would suggest you to book him. But if it's not the only thing holding you back, save your books, use them on more important champions because all you care about having from him is the A1. Now, if you would use this champion in different parts of the game, like against the Dreadhorn boss, yeah, you kind of need to have him booked there, mainly for this, to make sure he's actually landing the debuffs. But even like that, it's not a shorter cooldown and it's not 100% chance to land those debuffs, the attack down or block buffs. So honestly, up to you, but probably is another champion that I strongly suggest you to do not book, you know? If we're gonna go out of this faction, because I feel like we're gonna talk about every single champion from the Dark Elves, we're going straight to the Bannerlords. And while these champions as well will benefit of being fully booked, of course, you can run them the way they are perfectly. So, Black Knight, for example, awesome champion, right? On the A1, he just deals a bit of more damage. He doesn't hit that hard, the champion. So, booking him just to get that extra damage would be a total waste because honestly, he doesn't do much. On the A3, more damage, again, useless. Waste of books. So basically, you would waste 8 books. On the A3, this is already on a 3-turn cooldown. Continuous heal and increased defense. Now, having this on a 2-turn cooldown fully booked, this skill is amazing, right? If you get lucky with 1 book, run away. Never look back. That's what I've done on my other account. Ages ago, I just tried 1 book. It went on the A2. I never went back to try and book the rest because it's such a big waste of books. But if no, don't even waste one book. 3-turn cooldown for increased defense and continuous heal is amazing. It's so standard with the rest of the champions that you don't really have to worry about it. So he will work just fine the way he is. Then we have another champion from this faction, and that is Hellier, okay? So mainly you might use him in Go Second Arena teams, you might use him as an arena defense champion, maybe you will use him in the Spider to generate the shield, which probably not many of you guys are doing it. In Faction Wars, so on his A1, just extra damage. On the A2, more damage plus decreasing the cooldown by 1 turn. And that's the AoE attack and the one that generates the shield. So depending on what exactly you're doing with him, probably is not the most important thing to worry about. You know, like you can definitely use him without books. And this skill right here, if you're booking him, you decrease the cooldown by 2 turns. This could be actually pretty decent since he's almost like a cleanse overall if you don't have a cleanser in your team or immunity or anything like that. But I still feel like you can run him just perfectly the way he is, even for PvE, even for PvP. For PvP, once you're using this skill, 3-turn cooldown, 5-turn cooldown, you might not get to use it again. Now, it depends, of course, at what level you're playing Arena and all this, but I feel like this is another champion that we can run without really wasting any books on him, you know? If we're moving to a different faction, and that's the Demonspawn faction, guys. Now, right here, we have Dragstar, is a free champion, and probably a lot of you guys are like, okay, should I book this champion? On the A1, I'm getting more damage. On the A2, I'm getting this decreased by 1 turn, and I have a slightly higher chance to land a provoke. But that's only up to a 60% chance from a 40%. So it's not something that's game-changing completely. It's not something that's gonna hold you back in content. So I feel like he's still gonna do an amazing job without having any books. And then we have the passive. Honestly, out of the entire kit, the main thing that I would be concerned about booking will be the passive. Just a higher chance to land HP burn. But again, it's not up to 100% chance. So it's not that's gonna hold you back completely, you know? You're still gonna be able to do just fine if you're using the champion without books. I would personally use the books better on a support champion, like a reviver or something like that, you know? Because if my champions are constantly dying in content because I'm struggling to keep them alive, the gear is not strong enough, I want to be able to revive as often as possible to ensure that I'm able to complete the content. You know, that was always my mentality. I would always book my revivers over the damage dealers or over champions like this that are not really key champions, are not really like a must book, you know what I mean? I always prefer to go with the revivers. Now from here, a lot of people are using Mortu Macab in Arena to cheese Warlord and all this stuff. Would I suggest you to book him for it? Hell no. Like, his A1 deals a bit of more damage and all this. Same with the A2, more damage, decreasing the cooldown. But this is not the reason why people are using him in Arena. Most people are using him in Arena for this skill. And this skill doesn't have anything that benefits from being booked. No increased damage or decreasing the cooldown. And same with the passive. So most people are using Mortu Macab because of this. And you don't really need to book him at all. He's still gonna do the same amount of damage. This is probably one of the best champions that you shouldn't book, because he's not really gonna benefit from anything at all. So definitely do not book Mortu Macab, because he'll be doing a top job without books. Most probably, if I'm gonna ask you guys that are using Mortu Macab, how many of you actually have him booked and why? I'm just curious to see. Most probably the majority of you guys don't have him booked. There are a lot of damage dealers like Kurptuk, Initwi, Tranda, Leorius that if you're booking them, you're just gaining extra damage, you know? So probably you would still want to book them because extra damage is pretty important, especially for Arena. So that's at least kind of like my opinion. I would book my Nuker 100%, you know? But it kind of depends how many books you have available, and you gotta decide in between which champions to book. If you have tons of Nukers, probably you're not gonna book Kurptuk or Bloodwind Initwi unless they're literally your number one Nuker, you know? But if we're gonna go out of here and go all the way to the Skinwalkers, here we actually have no one else but Norog. So right here on the A1, we increase a bit the chance to place that block active skills on the A1. If you're running him for PvP, most of the people do run immunity. They have champions that give them immunity if they don't actually have an immunity set. So this kind of becomes pretty useless. This one right here, block buffs, is a 100% chance to land it. So you don't need books in order to make the most out of it. Now, decreasing it to a 3-turn cooldown can be pretty beneficial if you're running him for Hydra as an example. On this rotation, he could be pretty good. But overall, you could still run him everywhere in the game without worrying about this, since his passive is one of the most important things that he offers, and he doesn't require books there. So Norog, another champion that I would probably suggest you to don't book unless you have tons and tons of books. If we're gonna go all the way to the Ogrin tribes, we have no one else but Kurptuk. He was a fusion champion, pretty decent. Now on the A1, extra damage. He's not a damage dealer, so we don't really care about that. On the A2, removes all debuffs except poisons debuffs from an ally, then heals them by 30%. So we are gaining a bit of extra heal. This heal is not gonna be huge. The shield that we're getting from books is not gonna be huge, so it's not something worth it, okay? Even if you wanna use him in clan boss, you're not gonna want him booked because you wanna have the cleanse on a 3-turn cooldown to remove the stun. Then you have this skill right here. You don't need books unless you wanna have these block buffs on a 100% chance. And if you're using him for arena, then it's kind of like, yeah, I would suggest you to try and book just this skill and run away from the rest. Most probably that's kind of like what I would do. I would only book his A3. But if this is not really the main thing that you're worried about, the block buffs, and you're worried only about having the damage boost for dungeon bosses and dungeon waves, you don't need books for that. Literally, just have the poisons land on your allies, which it doesn't require anything in terms of books, and just use him like that. But for arena, I would suggest you to book him, you know. Another champion that's kind of like newish, I don't personally have him, but Calvalx. So from what I understood from every single person out there that is using this champion, this skill right here doesn't do much damage, okay? So if you're booking him, it's not really gonna increase much the damage because the skill is kind of rubbish. It doesn't do tons of damage. The A1 does have a higher chance to increase the duration of poisons if you book him, which is true. With the A2 right here, places an extra hit for each poison debuff on the target. Is just having extra damage, not even decreasing the cooldown of a skill. But all that matters for this champion is the passive. So if you've seen a lot of speed runs in dungeons with this champion, everybody's using him for the passive. They don't even give him gear. So this is definitely a champion that doesn't require books either. All we care about is mainly the passive, to have all these poisons landing at the start of each round. And no books will increase anything on the passive. The next champion that we have on the list, and honestly, this is one champion that you're not really gonna use in many areas in the game, okay? So if you're using him for arena, he's not doing tons of damage. So you're not really making a huge case here to say, well, I'm gonna book him because he's gonna deal 20% more damage. I'm slaughtering the enemies. True, stealing 2 random buffs before attacking is something, but that's only if you decide to go with tons of accuracy on the champion, you know? Which probably you're not gonna do. Then if we're gonna have a look at this skill, again, it's just damage, decreasing the cooldown of a skill, and it's not a skill that hits hard. Definitely not something I would recommend anyone to book. The passive is kind of like the key thing that makes him good to solo the Dreadhorn boss. Probably that's kind of like the main thing where people would use Samar if they get him, and maybe some of them in Faction Wars, but again, for Faction Wars, you don't need to have him fully booked. And the A1 is just damage. So this is another champion that will work just fine without books. Whenever I'm using this on my other account, I'm locking the A2 and A3. So basically, I use the A1 and the passive, nothing else. And those, they don't need books either. So that's another thing to keep in mind. Then, Molly Tankard on the A1, just extra damage. She's not a damage dealer. On the A2, this is on a 4-turn cooldown. If we're gonna book her, we don't increase the chance to land provoke. We just decrease the cooldown by 1 turn, which honestly can be used without that. For dungeons or whatever we want to do with her, we can use her without. On the passive, This is on a 2-turn cooldown already. If we're gonna book her, it goes down to 1 turn. So fills the Termeter of all allies when this champion is hit. Yeah, this can benefit you if you have her booked on this skill for Arena, but it's gonna work just fine without being booked. Like, I'm using her on the lowest HP, Hegemon targets her, I'm getting the Termeter, nuke the team, game over, you know? That's kind of like the way it works. I provoke them once, I don't really get to provoke them the second time, and even if I do, I reset the skills, so I don't really care about the cooldown on the champion. Then you have the revive. Now, this is one thing that probably you would want to book because it's going on a 4-turn cooldown instead of 6, but I don't think a lot of you guys will use this champion as their main reviver in any content in the game, you know? But if you gotta decide in between a bunch of different champions and other champions bring you more utility, probably she will be one of the last champions I would focus to book overall, you know? And the last champion that I want to talk about, this is kind of like, yes and no. I'm kind of like always disagreeing with this, and it's kind of like the same situation for Seal of the Drakes and Arbiter, for example, you know? So, yeah, it's not going to benefit you anything from here. It's not going to benefit you much from here unless you go with accuracy. And this can go on a 3-turn cooldown. This can go on a 5-turn cooldown. And overall, it can be very helpful for Arena. But the majority of you guys that are using Arbiter, you're going in a fight, boost Termeter, bang, kill the enemy, move to the next one, or boost the Termeter, revive one time, gain the extra turn, and at some point you're gonna boost again, bang, move to the next team. Personally, I really suggest you to book this champion. I feel like I would personally do it because I'm doing Platinum Arena all the time. And yeah, I do want to have the revive on a shorter cooldown, boosting the Termeter with the A3 on a shorter cooldown. But I still don't care about the A2 or the A1, even for Platinum Arena, because I don't have tons of accuracy on her, so she's not really gonna decrease the cooldown of any buffs at all. Sometimes it might happen on a nuker or a Madame series or something like that, but it's not something that's gonna happen very often. These are kind of like my top 15 champions I would suggest you to don't book because they are doing an amazing job without books. Do let me know if I missed anyone. There are, how I specified, some champions that do extra damage, and some of you guys are like, well, I'm not gonna book that one. But that's honestly really a personal choice. Every person will think differently on that one. I'm on the opinion that I should book the champions that give me extra damage if are my main nukers, you know? But that was all for this video. Appreciate all of you guys watching. Hopefully this saved you some books and helped you decide on what champions to book. That was all for this video. Much love, and I'll catch you all soon in the next one. Peace.